In a small and quiet village called Okuta, there lived a young girl named Amara. She was about 18 years old, tall and slim, with soft brown skin and bright, hopeful eyes. She lived with her mother, Mama Kemi, in a small mud house near the village market. They did not have much, but they had peace and love. Every morning when the sun rose above the tall palm trees, Amara would carry a wooden basket filled with fruits, oranges, bananas and mangoes, to the roadside. There she and her mother sold them to travelers who passed by. Life was not easy for them. Sometimes they sold enough to buy rice for dinner. Other days they went to bed with only boiled cassava and water. But even on those hard days Amara never complained. She always smiled and told her mother, "Better days will come, Mama." Her mother would nod and reply, "Yes, my child. Good hearts always find their blessings." But not everyone in the village was kind. The other girls in Okuta often mocked Amara for being poor. They wore fine dresses, painted their nails, and spent their days gossiping near the river. When they saw Amara passing with her basket of fruits, they would laugh loudly and say, "There goes the market girl. Who will ever marry a fruit seller's daughter?" Amara heard them many times, but she never replied. She simply smiled and kept walking. Deep inside, she told herself that one day her hard work and kindness would speak louder than their laughter. One hot afternoon, the sun burned strongly, and dust filled the air as cars passed on the village road. Amara sat under a tree beside her stall, fanning herself with a piece of cardboard. Her mother had gone home to rest, so she was alone. Business was slow that day. Only a few travelers stopped to buy fruits. She was almost ready to close when she heard a loud sound, a car engine struggling and coughing. Not far from her stall, a black car stopped suddenly. Smoke rose from under its bonnet. Some of the villagers nearby laughed. "Another fancy car broken again," one man said. "Maybe they should walk like us." No one moved to help. People just watched. But Amara quickly ran to the car, carrying her small water bottle. She saw a young man step out, wiping sweat from his forehead. He was dressed simply in a plain white shirt and black trousers. His shoes were dusty from the road. "Good afternoon, sir," Amara said politely. "Are you all right?" The man looked at her and nodded slowly. "Yes, just a little problem with the car. It got too hot. I'll wait for it to cool down." Amara opened her bottle and handed it to him. "Please have some water. The sun is too strong today." The man hesitated for a moment, then smiled. "Thank you, young lady. That's very kind of you." He drank the water and sighed with relief. Amara went back to her stall, brought a small stool and offered it to him. "You can sit, sir. The ground is hot." The man smiled again, clearly surprised by her kindness. As he sat down, Amara used a rag to wipe his car window gently, just to help him see better once he continued his journey. "You don't need to do that," he said softly. Amara smiled and replied, "It's fine, sir. You're a guest in our village. My mother says guests are blessings." He looked at her closely as if studying her. Her dress was old and faded, her slippers thin, but her eyes were full of life. "What is your name?" he asked. "My name is Amara, sir," she said shyly. "And you?" The man chuckled. "Just call me Tund." He looked around at the trees and dusty road. "Do you always help strangers like this?" Amara nodded. "We don't have much, but I think kindness costs nothing. If I were in trouble, I would want someone to help me too." Tund smiled again. "You have a good heart, Amara." Then he stood and walked to check his car. The engine had cooled, and after a few tries it started again. He turned back to her. "Thank you for the water and the kindness. You've helped me more than you know." Amara smiled and waved. "Safe journey, sir." As he drove away, a small breeze passed through the trees, and Amara stood quietly, watching the car disappear down the road. She didn't know who he really was or where he was going. She only felt happy that she had done something good that day. The other villagers who had been watching whispered among themselves. "That girl again," one of them said. "Always helping people. She thinks kindness will make her rich." Amara heard them, but she didn't care. She just smiled and started packing her remaining fruits. When Mama Kemi returned later that evening, Amara told her what had happened. Her mother smiled proudly. "You did well, my daughter. A kind act never goes to waste. You may not see the reward now, but heaven never forgets kindness." That night, as Amara lay on her mat, she thought about the stranger named Tund. There was something peaceful about him. He had spoken gently and looked at her with respect, something few people ever did. She closed her eyes, not knowing that their paths would cross again in a way she could never imagine. Days passed, and Amara continued her usual routine. The mocking from the village girls didn't stop. One morning as she passed them on her way to the market, one of them, Bola, laughed and said, "Amara, when will your rich prince come and take you away from the market?" They all laughed loudly. Amara only smiled and replied, "Maybe sooner than you think." They laughed harder, thinking she was joking. But deep inside, Amara's heart was calm. She believed that life could change in a moment. That same afternoon, as she sold fruits by the roadside, she saw a shiny car drive past, the same black car she had helped a few days earlier. She thought she saw a familiar face inside, but the car didn't stop. Still, she smiled and whispered, "Safe journey, sir." That evening, the sky turned orange and the sound of drums echoed from far away. There was news spreading around the village. The elders were talking about the royal family from the nearby Obadara kingdom. Rumor had it that the young prince was returning from abroad to help the poor and visit villages. People were excited and curious. Amara listened quietly as people talked about the prince. They said he was rich, wise, and humble. But Amara thought little of it. She had work to do and dreams to chase. Before going to bed that night, she looked out through the small window of their hut. The stars shone brightly above the trees. She whispered softly, "Maybe one day something good will come from being kind." Her mother heard her and smiled in the dark. "It surely will, my child," she said gently. The next day, Amara woke up early again, ready to work. She didn't know that her small act of kindness had already planted a seed in someone's heart, a seed that would soon grow into something beautiful, something that would change her life forever. The end. Weeks passed quickly after the day Amara helped the stranger on the roadside. Life in the village of Okuta went on as usual. The sun still rose over the palm trees, and Amara and her mother still sold fruits by the dusty road. But something strange was happening in the air. People were talking more, whispering about big news that had come from the nearby Obadara kingdom. One morning, when Amara arrived at the market, she saw a crowd gathered around the village square. The town crier was standing there, beating his drum and shouting, "Hear ye! Hear ye! The royal family of Obadara kingdom invites all young achievers to a grand charity event in the city. It will be held at the royal palace next month." Everyone in Okuta clapped and cheered. The village had never been part of such an event before. It was said that the young prince himself would attend and give gifts and scholarships to those who had shown great effort or good character in their communities. At first, Amara didn't pay much attention. She thought, "That is for rich people, not for someone like me." She continued selling her fruits quietly. But 2 days later, something unexpected happened. A messenger from the district office came to the market carrying a list in his hand. He began reading the names of the people chosen to attend the event. When he reached the 5th name, the crowd gasped. "Amara, daughter of Mama Kemi," the man announced. The market fell silent. Everyone turned to stare at her. Some laughed, some whispered, and others frowned. Did he say Amara? The fruit seller's daughter? Someone said in disbelief. Another person added, "There must be a mistake." Amara herself was shocked. She pointed at herself and asked softly, "Me?" The messenger smiled and nodded. "Yes, young lady. You have been selected for your good behavior and for helping travelers and elders in your community. The royal family appreciates your kindness." Her mother, Mama Kemi, who was standing nearby, clapped her hands in joy. "Ah, praise be to God," she said with tears in her eyes. "My daughter's heart shines brighter than gold." But not everyone shared her happiness. Bola and the other village girls who had always mocked Amara stood at a distance whispering, "How can a girl with torn clothes go to the royal palace?" Bola scoffed. "Maybe she'll go there and embarrass herself." They laughed cruelly, but Amara ignored them. That night, Amara sat by the fire with her mother. "Mama," she said quietly, "how can I go to the city? I don't have nice clothes like the others." Her mother smiled and took her hand. "My child, you will go as you are. The palace does not need fine clothes, it needs fine hearts. We will sew you a simple gown with the fabric I have kept for years. It may not be new, but it will carry my love and prayers." Amara hugged her mother tightly, feeling comforted. The following week, Mama Kemi worked day and night to sew the dress. It was a light blue gown made from soft cotton, decorated with tiny beads from old necklaces. It was simple but beautiful in its own way. The day of the event finally came. The villagers gathered to watch Amara leave for the city. Some wished her well, others whispered behind her back. "Let's see what this fruit girl can do," someone said mockingly. But Amara only smiled, carrying her small bag and her mother's blessings. The journey to the city was long. She rode in a crowded bus with other invited youths from nearby villages. As the bus moved along the smooth road, Amara looked out of the window in wonder. She had never seen tall buildings before. The city was full of lights, cars, and people dressed in bright clothes. Everything looked new and exciting. When the bus stopped near the royal grounds, Amara stepped out slowly, feeling nervous. The palace gates stood high and wide, guarded by soldiers in golden uniforms. Inside, the place sparkled, clean marble floors, shining lights, and flowers arranged beautifully everywhere. Amara's heart beat fast. She had never seen such beauty before. The event was filled with many young men and women from across the kingdom. They wore expensive clothes, glittering gowns and suits. Some carried fancy handbags. Others wore shiny jewelry. Amara looked down at her handmade dress and touched the small beads her mother had sewn. It was not fancy, but it made her feel proud. She found a seat in the back row and watched quietly. Music played and laughter filled the air. A group of girls sitting nearby noticed her and began whispering. "Who is that?" one of them asked. "She looks like a village girl." Another laughed softly. "Maybe she came to serve food, not attend the event." Amara heard them but said nothing. She remembered her mother's words, "A calm heart is stronger than loud voices." She sat straight, folded her hands neatly, and smiled politely. When the master of ceremonies took the stage, he announced, "Today we celebrate not only intelligence but good character. The palace believes kindness is true greatness." Amara's heart lifted when she heard those words. For the first time she felt that maybe she belonged there after all. Later, refreshments were served, and the guests were invited to walk around the palace garden. The place was wide and beautiful, with green lawns, fountains, and roses of every color. Amara walked slowly, admiring everything. She had never seen a fountain before. The sound of water made her smile. Suddenly she heard a familiar voice nearby. "Excuse me, are you enjoying the event?" She turned and saw a young man dressed in simple clothes, not like the others wearing fancy suits. He had kind eyes and a warm smile. "Yes," Amara said softly. "It's beautiful here." He nodded. "It is. But beauty is not in places like this. It is in people who make others feel welcome." Amara smiled shyly. "That is true. My mother says kindness makes the world brighter." The young man smiled wider. "Your mother is a wise woman." They both laughed gently. She felt comfortable talking to him. He asked about her village, her family, and her dreams. Amara spoke honestly. "I want to go to school one day and help my mother. She works very hard." The young man looked at her thoughtfully. "That is a noble dream," he said. Just then, a royal assistant called from afar, "Prince Tund, your presence is needed inside." Amara froze. "Prince Tund?" she whispered. The young man smiled kindly and nodded before walking away. She stood there, speechless, watching him go. It was the same man she had helped weeks ago on the roadside, the traveler whose car had broken down. Her heart beat fast. She couldn't believe it. The man she had offered water and kindness to was the prince himself. She suddenly felt nervous, wondering if she had spoken too freely or been too simple in front of him. But then she remembered his smile, calm and gentle, and she relaxed a little. As the evening went on, Amara sat quietly at her seat, still in disbelief. People clapped as the prince gave a speech about kindness and humanity. He said, "True beauty is not in wealth or fine clothes. It is in the heart that helps others without expecting reward." His eyes briefly met Amara's from across the hall, and she quickly looked away, blushing. When the event ended, Amara stood under the bright city lights, holding her small bag tightly. The same girls who had mocked her earlier now whispered again, wondering why the prince had smiled in her direction. Amara didn't respond. She simply smiled and whispered to herself, "Mama was right, good hearts shine brighter than." The palace garden glowed with golden lights that evening. The air was fresh, filled with the soft sound of music and the gentle scent of blooming flowers. Amara stood quietly near a fountain, watching the water sparkle like diamonds under the light. She still couldn't believe she was standing inside the royal palace. Everything around her looked like something from a dream: tall pillars, shining chandeliers, and people dressed in the most beautiful clothes she had ever seen. Even though she was surrounded by rich and powerful people, Amara didn't feel jealous. She was grateful to be there. Her mother's words echoed in her mind, "Keep your heart clean, my child. Riches fade but kindness lasts." Those words made her smile as she stood among strangers. While she admired the garden, she noticed a man walking toward her. He wasn't dressed like the others. His clothes were simple, a plain shirt and dark trousers. His presence felt calm and gentle. He smiled warmly as he came closer. "Good evening," he greeted. Amara turned slightly, a bit surprised. "Good evening, sir," she replied softly. "You seem to enjoy the garden," the man said, his voice kind. "Yes," Amara said, looking around. "It's so peaceful here. I like the sound of the water." He smiled. Most people don't notice such small things. They only see the big decorations. Amara looked at him curiously. "Maybe they are too busy being seen," she said shyly. "I like quiet places. They remind me of home." He chuckled gently. "You must be from a peaceful place then." She nodded. "My village is called Okuta. It's small but full of kind people, and noise from chickens," she said with a laugh. The man laughed too, his eyes lighting up. "That sounds nice. I've never been there. Maybe one day I will visit." They walked slowly along the path together. The night breeze blew softly, carrying the sound of music from inside the hall. The man looked at her again and asked, "What brought you here today?" Amara looked down at her hands. "I was invited," she said. "They said it's for young people who help others. I didn't expect my name to be there." "You must have done something good," he said kindly. She smiled. "I only try to help when I can. My mother says kindness brings blessings." He nodded slowly. "Your mother is right. The world needs more people who think like you." They stopped near a large tree covered in white flowers. The man looked at her closely. "You don't act like the others," he said softly. "Most people here only talk about money or clothes. You talk about kindness." Amara looked away, shy but smiling. "I just try to be myself," she said quietly. "I may not have much, but I still have my heart." The man's eyes softened. "That is something even the richest people forget," he said. They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars appear one by one above the palace walls. The moment felt calm, almost magical. For the first time that night, Amara forgot where she was. She felt safe and free talking to him as if she had known him all her life. After a few minutes, he turned to her and said, "Would you like some juice? There's a table nearby." She nodded politely. "Thank you, sir." He poured a glass and handed it to her. As she took it, their fingers brushed for a second. Amara quickly pulled her hand back, feeling shy. The man smiled again as if he found her innocence refreshing. "So, Amara," he said, saying her name slowly, "what is your dream?" She looked up, surprised that he knew her name. "How do you know my name?" she asked. He chuckled softly. "It's written on your badge," he said, pointing to the small tag pinned on her dress. Amara laughed. "Oh, I didn't even notice." He smiled. "So tell me, what is your dream?" Amara looked up at the stars again. "I want to go to school one day," she said. "I stopped when my father died because we couldn't afford it. But I want to study and help my mother. She's worked so hard for me." He nodded, his face thoughtful. "That's a beautiful dream. And I believe it will come true." "Do you think so?" Amara asked, her eyes shining with hope. "I know so," he said gently. "Good hearts always find their way." They both smiled. But before Amara could ask him more questions, they heard a loud voice calling from the main hall. "Everyone, please come inside. The royal family will arrive soon." People began walking toward the hall. The man looked at her and said, "It was nice talking to you, Amara." She smiled. "It was nice talking to you too, Tund," he said. "My name is Tund." She repeated it softly. "Tund. That's a nice name." He nodded, smiling. "Goodbye for now, Amara." He walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Amara stood there for a moment, watching him leave. Something about him felt familiar, but she couldn't place it. She shook her head and followed the others into the large hall. Inside, the room sparkled even more than the garden. Golden chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and soft music played as the guests took their seats. Amara sat quietly at the back, still thinking about Tund. His voice, his smile, his calmness, it all stayed in her mind. After a few minutes, the music stopped. The master of ceremony stepped forward and said loudly, "Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for His Royal Highness, Prince Tundo Badara." The hall erupted in applause. Everyone stood up. Amara's heart jumped. "Prince Tund?" she thought in shock. Her eyes widened as she looked toward the stage. And there he was, the same man from the garden. The same man she had just been talking to. The same man she had once helped when his car broke down by the roadside. Her mouth fell open. She couldn't believe it. Her hands trembled as she whispered to herself, "It can't be him?" Prince Tund walked gracefully to the front, dressed now in royal attire, a dark blue suit with a gold pin on his chest. The crowd bowed slightly as he waved politely. His face was calm, but his eyes searched the crowd, until they found hers. Amara quickly looked down, embarrassed. Her cheeks burned. She wanted to hide but she couldn't move. Her heart beat so fast she could barely breathe. I talked to a prince like he was my friend. She thought nervously. I called him just Tund. The people around her whispered excitedly. He's so handsome, one woman said. And so kind. Amara sat quietly, her mind spinning. She remembered every word they had spoken in the garden. Every smile. Every gentle look. Now she understood why he had seemed so calm and different. He wasn't just anyone, he was the Prince of Obadara. During his speech, Prince Tund talked about hope, kindness, and the importance of helping others. As he spoke, his eyes often glanced toward the back of the hall where Amara sat. She lowered her gaze every time, afraid someone might notice. When the event ended, people rushed to greet the prince. Amara stayed where she was, trying not to be seen. She felt small and shy, unsure if she should approach him. But as the crowd surrounded him, he looked over their heads and met her eyes once again. His expression was warm, full of gratitude and something gentle, as if to say, I remember you. Amara smiled faintly, her heart full of emotion she couldn't explain. She didn't know what the future held, but in that single glance she felt something change inside her. That night, as she left the palace, the stars above seemed brighter than before. The memory of his kind eyes stayed with her, glowing softly in her heart. After the big event at the royal palace, the whole kingdom began to talk about one thing: the prince. Newspapers wrote about his speech on kindness and good character. People praised his wisdom and his calm nature. But what caught everyone's attention most was a rumor spreading from the palace servants. Prince Tund was searching for a woman with a true heart to marry. In every corner of the city, people whispered about it. The prince does not want a woman of wealth, someone said. He wants someone humble, someone kind. At first no one believed it. Many rich ladies laughed and said, he will still choose one of us. No prince will ever marry a poor girl. But deep in his heart, Tund knew what he wanted. Ever since that night at the palace, he couldn't stop thinking about Amara, the quiet girl in the handmade blue dress. He remembered how she spoke with honesty, how she smiled shyly, and how her words carried peace. She had treated him kindly when he was only a stranger with a broken car. No one had ever done that for him without expecting anything in return. One evening, Tund stood by his balcony, watching the sun set over the royal city. His mother, Queen Mornike, walked in gently. My son, she said, you seem lost in thought. Is something troubling you? Tund smiled faintly. Not troubling, mother. Just thinking about someone. The queen raised an eyebrow. Ah, so it's a woman? He nodded slowly. Yes. She's unlike anyone I've met. Simple, pure, and kind. She comes from a small village called Okuta. The queen looked surprised. Okuta? That is far from here. But if she truly has captured your heart, then perhaps you should see her again. A prince must marry not for beauty but for peace. Her words encouraged him. That night, Tund made a decision. He would visit Okuta again, not in secret but as the Prince of Obadara Kingdom. He wanted the world to know that kindness, not riches, had won his heart. The next morning, the palace servants were busy preparing. A royal convoy of cars was arranged, and word spread quickly that the prince was traveling. But no one knew where he was going. Back in Okuta village, life went on as usual. Amara was at her fruit stall, smiling as she sold mangoes to travelers. Her mother, Mama Kemi, was beside her, peeling oranges. The villagers still whispered about her trip to the palace, though most had forgotten the details. Bola and the other girls sometimes mocked her quietly, saying, so, the prince didn't choose you after all. Amara only smiled and replied, it's enough that I was there. That memory will stay with me forever. But destiny had other plans. That afternoon, as the sun burned gently over the village, a sound of engines filled the air. People turned their heads and gasped. A long line of black cars drove slowly into Okuta. Soldiers in fine uniforms stepped out first, followed by royal guards holding golden flags. The villagers ran from their homes, shocked and curious. Children shouted and danced in excitement. It's the royal convoy, one man shouted. The prince is here. Mama Kemi dropped the orange she was holding. What? She said, trembling. The prince here? Amara froze. Her hands shook as she looked toward the road. Mama, why would he come here? She whispered. Before her mother could answer, the car doors opened and Prince Tund stepped out, dressed in royal clothes, a white agbada with gold embroidery. His presence filled the air with calm strength. Everyone went silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. The villagers, realizing who it was, began to bow and kneel. Bola and her friends quickly covered their faces, unable to believe what they were seeing. Tund walked slowly through the crowd, smiling kindly at the people. His eyes searched until they stopped at the small fruit stall near the road. There stood Amara, her eyes wide, her heart pounding. He took a few steps toward her. The crowd parted quietly. When he reached her, he stopped and said in a gentle voice, "Do you still sell fruits, Amara?" Amara's lips trembled. "Yes, your highness," she said softly. "This is what I know best." Tund smiled warmly. "It's honest work and that makes it noble." Mama Kemi quickly knelt, tears in her eyes. "Oh, my prince, welcome to our humble home," she said. "You honor us with your presence." Tund bent slightly and helped her up. "Please, Mama, don't bow to me. I came here to show honor, not to receive it." The villagers gasped softly at his humility. He turned to Amara again. "I came because there's something I must say. I have met many people, women of beauty, women of wealth, but I have never met anyone like you. You helped a stranger when no one else did. You gave without asking for anything. That kind of heart is rare." Amara's eyes filled with tears. She couldn't speak. He continued, "When I saw you again at the palace, I realized what I was searching for. And now I am sure." The crowd around them was completely silent. Even the birds on the trees seemed to be listening. Then Tund did something no one expected. He took a small step forward, looked into Amara's eyes and said softly, "Amara, I came here to ask for your hand in marriage." The entire village gasped. Women covered their mouths. Men shouted in surprise. Bola and her friends stood frozen, unable to believe what they had just heard. Amara shook her head slightly, still thinking it must be a dream. "Me, your highness? You want to marry me?" Tund smiled. "Yes, you. Not because of riches but because of your heart. You saw me as a man before you saw me as a prince." Mama Kemi began to cry openly. She held her daughter's hand tightly, whispering, "God is wonderful. I told you kindness never hides." Amara's tears fell quietly. She knelt slowly and said, "Your highness, I don't deserve this. I am just a simple girl." Tund gently lifted her up by the hand. "You deserve this and more, Amara. A crown is not made of gold alone, it is made of a good heart. And yours shines brighter than any jewel in my palace." The crowd began to cheer. Children ran around singing, "Our sister is marrying the prince." The women clapped and danced and even the men smiled proudly. The same people who once mocked her now bowed before her, ashamed of their past words. Tund turned to Mama Kemi. "Mama, may I have your blessing?" Mama Kemi smiled through her tears. "You already have it, my prince. Take care of my daughter as your own heart." "I will," Tund said firmly. The royal guards clapped politely and the villagers followed. That day became the happiest day Okuta had ever seen. As the sun began to set, Tund and Amara walked together along the dusty road, the same road where they first met. He looked at her and said, "Do you remember this place?" She nodded. "How could I forget? You were the traveler with the broken car." He smiled. "And you were the girl with the pure heart." They both laughed softly, the sound mixing with the wind and the songs of the villagers in the distance. That night, as the stars came out over Okuta, Mama Kemi stood outside her hut, watching the royal cars drive away with her daughter beside the prince. Her eyes filled with tears again, but they were tears of joy. The same girl who once sold fruits on the roadside was now being taken to the royal palace, not as a servant, but as the future princess of Obadara Kingdom. The royal wedding of Prince Tund and Amara became the talk of the whole kingdom. People traveled from far and near to witness it. The palace was decorated with flowers and bright golden lights that made it shine like the morning sun. Drummers beat their drums with joy, singers filled the air with sweet melodies, and the people of Obadara danced in excitement. When Amara arrived at the palace gates in a white gown made of soft lace, the crowd gasped. She looked beautiful, but what made her shine most was her calm spirit and gentle smile. Many who had once laughed at her from the village could not hold back their tears. They whispered among themselves, "Is this not the same Amara who sold fruits by the roadside? Truly no one knows tomorrow." The queen, Tund's mother, walked proudly beside her new daughter-in-law. She held Amara's hands and said quietly, "You have brought peace into my son's life. You have reminded us all that kindness is a royal treasure." Tund stood at the altar, his eyes fixed on her. When Amara reached him, he whispered, "You are perfect, my love." The crowd cheered as the royal priest blessed their union. Bells rang across the city and people shouted with joy. For the first time, the people of Obadara saw a royal wedding that was not about wealth or beauty, but about true love and humility. After the ceremony, there was a grand feast. Long tables were filled with jollof rice, roasted chicken, sweet fruits, and all kinds of traditional dishes. Dancers performed, and everyone celebrated until late in the night. Amara's mother, Mama Kemi, sat among the royal guests, dressed in a fine wrapper and head tie. She watched her daughter with proud tears in her eyes. When the queen came to sit beside her, Mama Kemi said softly, "I never dreamed of this day." The queen smiled and replied, "Your daughter earned this with her heart. You raised her well." Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Amara slowly adjusted to her new life as Princess Amara of Obadara. She lived in a large palace with shining marble floors, tall pillars and golden lamps that never went dark. Servants bowed when she passed and guards saluted her at every corner. Yet, despite all the luxury around her, Amara remained the same humble girl she had always been. Every morning she greeted the palace workers by name, asking how their families were. When one of the cooks fell ill, Amara went into the kitchen herself and helped prepare food for the day. The servants were shocked. "Your Highness, this is not your work," they said. But she only smiled and replied, "Work done with love is never too low." Prince Tund watched her with pride. One evening as they walked in the royal garden he said, "You've changed this palace, Amara. You've brought warmth into every corner." She laughed softly. "I only do what my mother taught me," she said. "To be kind no matter where life takes you." Though she was now a princess, Amara never forgot her home. She missed the laughter of the village children, the smell of roasted corn by the roadside, and the simple peace of her small house. So one day she told Tund, "I want to visit Okuta again." The prince agreed happily. "Then we shall go together," he said. When the royal convoy entered Okuta, the villagers once again gathered in wonder. But this time they were not shocked, they were proud. They had heard stories of how Amara had not changed, how she treated people kindly, and how she had become a voice for the poor. Amara stepped down from the royal car wearing a simple white dress and a scarf tied neatly around her head. She did not wear a crown that day. She wanted the people to see her as one of them. The villagers cheered and sang, "Our daughter has returned, our Queen of Hearts." She went straight to her old fruit stall, which her mother still kept open. The same wooden table stood there, though it looked older now. Amara smiled warmly and said, "Mama, you still sell fruits?" Mama Kemi laughed. "Yes, my child. It reminds me of the days we shared." Amara helped her mother serve a few customers that day. The villagers watched in amazement. "Even as a princess she still works with her hands," they whispered. Afterward, Amara called the village elders and spoke gently to them. "I have not forgotten where I came from," she said. "This village made me who I am. Now I want to give something back." She began projects that changed Okuta forever. She built a school for children who could not afford to learn. She built a health center for mothers and babies. She brought engineers to dig deep wells, giving the villagers clean water for the first time in years. Every time she visited, she wore simple clothes and sat among the people to listen to their problems. She helped the widows, supported the farmers, and encouraged the young girls to stay in school. When people tried to bow before her, she would gently lift them up and say, "Please, I am still Amara, the same girl who once sold fruits with her mother." Word spread across the kingdom about the princess who loved her people. Reporters came from the city to interview her. They asked, "Your Highness, how does it feel to come from such humble beginnings and now live in a palace?" Amara smiled and said softly, "It feels like a blessing, but one that comes with duty. I may wear a crown, but I will never forget the dust on my feet from Okuta. That dust is part of who I am." Her words touched hearts everywhere. Even the richest families in the kingdom began to see that kindness and humility were greater than gold and diamonds. Young girls across Obadara started to dream, not just of marrying princes but of becoming strong, kind women like Amara. At the palace, Tund often said to her, "You have given me more than love. You have given me purpose." Amara would laugh softly and reply, "And you have given me a chance to do good." Years passed and the people of Obadara grew to love her deeply. They called her, the humble queen. When she walked through the market, people waved and smiled. When she visited villages, children ran to hug her. She listened to everyone with patience and spoke to them as equals. Even the same women who once mocked her came to her one day, kneeling and crying, "Please forgive us. We didn't know who you truly were." Amara lifted them up and said, "You don't need forgiveness. We all learn. What matters is what we do after learning." The people cheered her kindness. Songs were written about her and her story spread far and wide. On her 10th anniversary as princess, a great celebration was held in the palace. People from Okuta came with gifts of fruits and handmade crafts. Amara hugged them warmly and said, "These are the real treasures. That evening as the sun went down, Amara stood by the palace balcony, looking at the sky filled with stars. Tund came beside her and said, "You've done more for this kingdom than any ruler before." Amara smiled gently. "I only planted the seed of kindness, my love. The people helped it grow." And in that moment, with the wind brushing softly against her face, she felt the same peace she had always known, the peace of a humble heart. The villagers of Okuta still sang her name, telling their children her story, how a poor village girl, once humiliated by others, rose not just to become a princess, but a queen in every heart she touched. And so, Amara remained the same girl she had always been, simple, kind and true. The poor village girl who once sold fruits by the roadside had become a queen, not only in the palace but in the hearts of her people.